Hello everyone and welcome to another video in the query formula series on Google Sheets. We have made quite a journey starting from writing the first select statement to doing things like group by, order by and pivot in the last video as well. So we've come a long way now, and we have also almost done with all the clauses that we have to look at. So in today's video we are going to look at these four clauses together because they're relatively very easy, relatively very simple. They just help you to trim your data a little better, design your data a little better maybe, right? That's the only thing that these do. So you can say it's a little bit of data cleaning over here more than a transformation, but sometimes even these can help you along the way as you are trying to write queries for different scenarios that will come in your path, right? So let us look at them one by one, and let's cover them. So the first two that we are looking at is limit and offset, right? Limit is where you can limit the number of rows you want to output, right? Now there's a very common SQL question that gets asked in interviews and things like that is, give me the top 5 scores in the test, or give me the top 5 salary holders in the company, or give me the top 10 distances covered by the runners and things like that, right? So you have all these orders, right? Top 10, top 5. Whenever you get questions like that in a SQL or in any kind of a scenario, the idea is that you arrange the data first, because if you're saying I want to see the top 5 or top 10 scorers in a test, first you need to arrange them in the descending order, right? Because you want to see everything ordered from the greatest to the lowest. Okay, and then what you do is you add a limit. So if you, let's say, have 20 names, okay, you arrange them in descending order. You have 20 students, but you want to see the top 5. So what do? You eliminate the rest of them from your output. Okay, you're definitely ordering the data, all of them in the descending order, but I only want to see the top 5. So that is where the limit function comes. Okay, so you just add limit and you specify how many rows do you want to see in your resultant table. So it's the same thing in the query formula as well, and the same thing in SQL. The next one we have is offset. In offset, it works in the other direction. You skip a given number of first rows. So if in the limit, if you're only taking top 5 and eliminating the rest of the bottom 15, in offset you can decide from the top how many rows do you want to skip. So let's say I don't want to look at the top 5. I want to look at the rest of the 15, right? Or I want to look at I want to look at the rest of the 15. Or let's say I ignore the top 10 and I want to look at the bottom 10 and see what are the scores like in the bottom 10, and then point out, okay, which students need special attention or why they didn't do well in this test or things like that. So that is where the offset option comes, right? So let's look at both of them first before we move on to the next two. So you can see I have this simple table over here where we are looking at state wise and the sum of units sold. Again, this is coming from the same data set that we have used. So right now what's happening is there is no order decided. Again, it's order by default in the alphabetical order, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to order this, right? I'm going to order the total number of units sold by state in the descending order. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to edit the query, and I'm going to write order by sum of I DESC, right? And now you see we have everything arranged in the descending order, right? And now I want to see the top 5 states with the highest number of units sold. So you can see that we have all the states coming as our output, but I don't want to see all of them. I want to see the top 5. So that is where we use the limit. So I'm just going to edit this query again. Order by sum of I DESC, limit, and then I specify the number of rows that I want to see starting from the top. So limit 5, and you see the rest of the rows are gone, and we only have the top 5 states where the sales of where the sum of the units sold is at the highest, right? The top 10 units sold in the descending order for the given states, and we've ignored the others, so we don't see the others, we just see this. So all this while we have only selected the data, we have definitely filtered the data. Okay, so that brings in some amount of restriction of data that comes in the table, right? And we also did a little bit, we use the pivot command to spread the data across, but we have never limited the query data to this extent, right? And of course we are going to see many more variations of what we have just done here, just by using the same formula and with the methods we have learned in the previous videos. But essentially this is what you get when you do top 5, and similarly you can look at top 10. So if I say limit 10, and now you see 5 more states are added, right? So these are the top 10 states where the sum of units sold is the highest, right? And this is how it can come. So this is how you can limit your rows based on the output that you need. Now let us look at the next one, which is offset. Now how does the offset work? Now let's say I do not want to see the top 10. Okay, I want to see the next top 10, right? I don't want to see these because I've already seen these, and we kind of know that this is where most of the sales are going to come from. So I want to see the next top 10, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this limit instead, because limit will start eliminating rows from the bottom, but offset will eliminate or skip rows from the top. So if I do offset, and let's say I want to remove the first 10 rows, so I do first 10 rows, and you can see now that we have all the rest of the rows, but we do not have the top 10 rows. Similarly, if I do 5, you can see some rows are coming now, right? And all the data is getting added on the top, not at the bottom. So that's the difference between limit and offset. So offset is you're skipping rows from the start of the table, from the first row, whereas limit is skipping rows after, based on the number of rows you want to skip after the given number. So if it's limit 5, so you'll skip all the rows after the 5th item in the table. So that's about limit and offset. Okay, so you can also do offset, let's say 15. Your table becomes much smaller now, right? Same way with limit. You can also limit your answers not just to 5, you can also limit it to 1 and say that, okay, New York state is where the highest number of units were sold. Make it 2 and say New York and California are the states where the highest number of units are sold, right? So that's about limit and offset. Now let us look at the next two, which is label and format. Labels are basically to set the column labels. Now this can be construed as aliases. So let's say you are selecting a column. Okay, let's say it's got a name such as country underscore name, and you're like, oh, that's a big name, it's got an underscore, very difficult to use it in a query. And what do? I want a different name, I want a shorter name. So that is where you say select column name. In this case it would be country name, so select country name as country, which means you are giving an alias to the column name country name, so that moving forward in the query you're going to call it as country and not country name. Why do we do this? It's easier to call the name country instead of country underscore name, right? Similarly in this as well, if you look at this, we have sum of units sold, and you present this table to your stakeholders and or your manager, and he says, I don't like the way the sum units sold is written. I know what it means, but I don't want it to look like this. I want the table to be presentable. I want it to look like total units sold or something like that, right? So we can change this name, and that is where the label clause comes into the picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first remove this limit. Let's go back to the old table, right? And now I'm going to use label. But before we do that, I'm just going to add the second dimension as well, so that we have two fact columns now. Sum of j. Yeah, I think we're good here. Yeah. So now we have the two columns. And we are going to now change the name of both these columns to total units sold and total sales. We're going to eliminate this sum out of the picture. Okay, so I'm just going to come here and I'm going to type label, and now you have to specify the column, right, which you have to change the name for. Now this can be your dimension column, it can be your fact column, right? So let's say I want to change the name of the state as well, the state column. Okay, I want to say, let's call it states instead of state. Okay, so if I want to do that, so I'll first write label, specify the column I want the name to be changed, which is E space, and then I write the new name, states. And now you can see it's in all caps, just the way I have written it, and this has been turned into states. Okay, similarly I'm going to change it for these two as well, one by one. So now after this is done, I'm going to put another column, which is your total units sold. So sum of I, I'm just going to call that space, and then I'm going to name this as total units. I think there's a comma that comes here, so I'm just going to add that. Oh, there's no comma here. Okay, I think this is going to work just as is. Label E states. I missed out on the single quotes. Comma. Okay, we're getting a lot of errors now. Yes, that's because we don't have a single quote here. Yeah, there you go. You can see how crucial every single quote, every comma, everything is in this table, because if that's not written correctly, the table does not function, right? So that was a little glimpse on how to troubleshoot that, and we will look into these things in a separate video. But if you look at this now, we have states and we have total units, just the way we have written it in the query formula. So we are changing the name of these so that it reflects a little better on how the table looks. As I mentioned earlier, this is more got to do with how the table looks and how clean the table should look, rather than transforming data into something else. So now under this label, if you see, this is label, and then we have pairs of nomenclature here, which is the name of the column which is coming from the select, and then the name that you want to add into this. So it does not change the name here. This name remains the same, whatever is in the source, but we are aliasing it. We are giving it the name states over here for the better presentation, or yeah, mostly for better presentation in this case, because in SQL it would mean a little different, whereas in this case it's all about showing how the table should look. So similarly, let's change the name for this as well. I'm going to go back again, add a comma, and then say sum of j total sales. There you go. You have to say states, you have total units, and you have total sales. Now they are named in the way that we want, right? Because we have specified the names over here. Right now this table looks much better than having some space total units or some space total sales, whatever, right? This looks much better, and this is something that, you know, managers or stakeholders would like to see, rather than getting confused about what some space something means, right? All right, now let us go to the last one, which is format. Now what does the format clause do? The format clause formats the values in certain columns using given formatting patterns, right? Now if you realize in this table that we have, your total units, they don't follow a number system, they're just written as is. total sales, which should be dollars, which should be like revenue, should be in dollars, is also written in just a standard number format. Now I want to change this format. I want to make this into like the proper number format, right, with commas and things. And this one should have dollars and commas both, right? So how are we going to do that? So that's also something you can do just by clicking this and doing a format, or else you can encode that format into your query formula itself, so that no matter whatever format your column is in any given sheet, the format gets embedded into the formula, so it appears in that format separate from the original columns format that is set. Okay, so for example, if let's look at what the column over here is. So it says automatic means it depends on what's written over there, right? So it would probably treat it as a simple text or something like that, right? But we want this to be treated as a number and this to be treated as currency. So what are we going to do is we are going to come here, and this query is getting bigger and bigger. Now after this is done, I have enabled all my names, and I'm just going to go format. Okay, and the first one I'm going to do is sum of I space, and now I'm going to assign the format. Okay, now what does this mean? If you actually go to format, and before we type this out, I want to show you this. If you come here and if you come to format, number format, custom number format, or any of these custom formats, if you come here, you're going to get this custom number formats, right? And you can see a little list over here. This is your custom format, and this is the output. So let's say I want this, I want comma, and I want 2 decimal places, then I should be following this as my format, right? So every output that you see over here on the right side has an assigned format on the left side, right? So if you see here, there's a percentage, there's percentage with double decimals, percentage with double decimals, there's exponential, there is date, and many more, right? So I'm going to pick the custom format from here and add it over there. In fact, I've already done it for one of them. So if you see here, I have this format already chosen, which I am going to use for total units. So I'm just going to go back, rewrite what I had written earlier, format sum of I, and this way, let me just expand that. Yeah, so same, the format also has to be written in single quotes, just like how we did for label and for other things. So I'm just going to close this, and look at that, we have commas now in the number system, right, following the number system for total units. Okay, let me expand this a little bit so you can see the query. So total sales, format sum of I, and the custom format is added. Okay, now let's do the same thing for this column as well, but I'm going to pick up the format from the table. So I'm just going to come here first, go to custom number format, custom currency I'll go for. And if you come to custom currency, you can see that you have formats for various currencies that are there over here, right? So I mean, in this case we're going to go for US dollar, so I'm just going to select that. Okay, and let's see if we can apply this. Okay, so I'm going to hit comma, say sum of J, copy this. Oops, that only gave us dollar, so I think we have to check that again. Okay, that's better. I just added a pound symbol over here, but if I add this with a comma, yeah, there you go. So basically the format is dollar, pound sign, comma, pound sign. So you can see that Now we have it in the dollars and we have it in the proper number system, right? So this is 64,229,339, 60,174, sorry, 60,174,133 dollars, right? And this is how now we have the correct formatting for the columns that we have. So units is described in the numbers and total sales is described in the currency. But let me just come back again and see what could be different. So yeah, this is actually the format that we could use. If you actually see here, this is one format, this is one format, this is another format, right? So these are all little formats that we have already, but even something as simple as that also will work. But anyways, I'm just going to choose this and use this just to show you how we can actually take these and use it. Okay, the only problem in this is that we do not have a dollar sign, so I'm just going to add that, and there you go. And the only difference in this is that this has a room for 2 decimal places as well, although we don't require it in this case because we don't have that kind of decimal placement. But I'm just going to keep it as is for now because I'm not exactly sure what's the surgical way to remove this in this format that's given, right? So that's the use of the format, where your format for the fact columns gets embedded into the query, and this does not change if you change the query, right? So let's say I change the query and add more dimensions. Let's say I add column G and column M, right? So I'm just going to add column G, column M, right? So group by will also have that column G, column M. Rest of it looks fine. So we have 2 new dimensions, and if you see here, our number format remains intact, right? We have the total sales in dollars and we have total units in the number systems, right? So I think our query has really gotten big now with all the selecting, the grouping, the ordering, labeling, determining the format, and all those things. So so this is how we have combined the 4 clauses into a single one, because they are mostly got to do with the data cleaning and the presentation of the new table, right? And so we have explored those ideas in this video. So thank you so much for sticking around this long, and I hope you can use this somewhere. I hope this was helpful. Please like this video and share it with your friends, and do consider subscribing to the channel, as we have a lot more data content coming your way across different platforms and concepts. So I would love it if you can hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for my upcoming videos. Thank you very much.